Hello and welcome to Monday Night Movie Night. My name is Larissa Davis. I am an immigration attorney and I represent immigrants in different immigration matters across the United States. And on Monday nights on this channel, I like to talk about movies that are about immigrants and their stories and their families. So if you are new, welcome. If you already subscribed to my channel, thank you so much for watching and subscribing, liking, and I hope that you will share some of your comments and feedback on what you think about this movie or others. So tonight's movie is called Meet the Patels. It's a documentary. It's actually a movie that started as, I guess, a home movie is what it was going to be, but it evolved into this really easygoing and funny family movie about an Indian American actor named Ravi Patel and his sort of journey to finding a partner because he's almost 30 years old and his parents really want him to get married. His parents were born and raised in India. They're immigrants, and he was born in New York and he was raised in America. And so he has both his Indian and American upbringing that affects his whole outlook on dating and finding somebody to be his wife, his long-term partner. And so it's really fun to watch, and it's interesting too. If you have not seen it, it came out in 2015, I think. Actually 2014. So it was initially a documentary that played at different film festivals. It was nominated for various awards. It won quite a few. It won the Audience Award for Best Documentary Feature at the Los Angeles Film Festival in 2014, and then was also a winner for a couple of awards at the Traverse City Film Festival. So anyone who knows what it's like trying to work on an independent film and get it put together and then enter it into independent film festivals, it's a big deal. And so getting those kind of awards is really exciting. And in this movie, this film, the actor Ravi Patel, who's actually in a lot of different movies, you might recognize him when you see him, but his sister is the one behind the camera, and she's focused on him, and he's the one sort of telling the story through his experiences with this approach to dating by accepting the Indian matchmaking way of dating. And it includes his mother, his father, and a lot of other family members, and as you'll see, extended family, friends, and even strangers. It's so fun. I loved watching this. And I thought it was really interesting too, because we get to see a little bit more into some of the customs or traditions of Indian culture when it comes to marriage and dating. And something that is unique about the Indian culture is how they go about approaching marriage. And so in this, he is an American and Indian, and his parents were born in India and are immigrants to America. And his father came over to the United States, I think in 1967, sometime in the mid 60s, and had a little, like $8, I think, in his pocket. And he met friends and he made it work, and eventually met his mother. And so Ravi's mother and father are very much traditional or old school in their way of believing how their young son and his sister, who's also single at the time of the film, should go about dating and meeting other Indians to find someone to marry. And so with Ravi, in this point in time, he has been dating an American girl, a white woman, for about 2 years, and he never actually had told his parents that he was dating her, presumably because she was not Indian, but he hides that from them. And they go on an annual trip to India, to the part of India that they're from. And so the story really starts out with this sort of family get together, this trip to India where he is talking to all these different people. And because he's approaching 30 years old and he's still single, he's getting a lot of questions about meeting women and dating, and getting asked when is he going to get married. So first off, right off the bat, if you don't already know, or if you are Indian and you might have experienced this, please share any thoughts you might have on this. But the pressure to be married in the Indian culture and find a partner seems quite heavy. As an immigration attorney that has represented many Indians, there is a lot of what I've seen pressure from family, especially parents, but the entire family, to get married, to find a partner, and to find somebody with not only who's Indian, but also within the area of India that your family is from. So Ravi Patel, last name Patel, his family are really, or his parents are really interested in him meeting an Indian woman from the part of India where their family is from, and other Patels. This whole film goes through different little scenarios or stories, little anecdotes about different things related to his family's, history or experiences that are really fun and humorous, but also loving and sweet too. And he kind of intertwines some of the stories into this whole narrative about this experience dating the Indian way through the matchmaking way with animation. And so while he's talking, there's actually animated characters. It's him as a cartoon talking, and so that kind of adds to the humorous part of this whole documentary. I love documentary films. I don't think I've watched one like this that's got this kind of style and humor, and so I really enjoyed watching it. And when I watched the trailer before deciding to watch the movie, I was already laughing, so I knew I wanted to see it. And so we follow Ravi through his trip. So he goes to India with his mother, father, and sister. Sister is filming, and he finally has this conversation with them where he tells them that he's willing to date other Indian women, and he'll consider it through the traditional method, which is explained in the film, but basically through this Indian matchmaking way where arranged marriages are made not in a sort of, I guess, forced way, but where the family is heavily involved in choosing other people to match up with their family member. So in this case, the son, Ravi, by looking at what's called biodata. And it's like these resumes and pictures of girls and guys. They're usually fairly young. I want to say like in their 20s when the families are trying to pair them up and match them to be married. But they share this information with other families in trying to get the matches. And then the young people, the young men and women who are looking for a partner, can look at these biodata sheets and decide whether or not they want to meet the person. And they can ultimately decide, if there's going to be a second date, or if they still want to talk to them if they're interested. So I don't know about you, but before I really got into representing Indians in immigration cases, I didn't know a whole lot about all of this when it comes to marriage. And I learned quite a bit because I do represent couples for immigration cases where they're petitioning for their spouse and trying to get a green card as a husband or wife. And so I learned quite a bit about about the Indian culture, and have represented Indians from different parts of India as well. And so watching this, in a documentary where the family is explaining how, and we see this with the father, there's certain parts of India in a geographic region that is more, I guess, desirable for their family, for their preferences, and how that's important to them is it's received in a different way from this younger generation, from Ravi or even his sister, where for him, he's Indian, but he's also American. And so there's more, I guess, openness on his end as a younger Indian American to also date other people in a traditionally American way, where you go out on dates or you meet people in other ways where it's not so, I guess, forced or arranged, where there's not that kind of pressure. And so when Ravi starts getting all these biodata sheets from his parents on these different women, he travels to the different places where the women are located all over the United States, and even one or two, I think, in Canada. And this is not completely out of the ordinary when it comes to these type of arrangements, because the families might live all in, different cities, different states around the United States. But the important part is that there is interest based on the information put into the biodata sheet, which is created by the family members. So in the documentary, different people in different Indian families or individuals are sort of not interviewed, but they give their commentary on different aspects. It's clear that when they were producing this, they were asking questions about the thoughts that the people in these situations had. And so the younger generations have a little bit different perspective and view on arranged marriage and dating than the older generations do. And so I was curious to find out, how successful are arranged marriages? And everything that I have read so far indicates that the arranged marriage method is actually something that has a very high success rate in terms of people staying together and being married and not divorced. I think the divorce rate ranged between 1% to 4%. Now, I don't know if that's only for India, or is it India and America that's included. I just looked at different articles and information about arranged marriages, but one thing that is consistent, whether you are Indian American or in India, is that the families are heavily involved in choosing these potential partners and looking at these biodata sheets and putting in the information. So I really loved how they showed how that is. But the sort of, I guess, conflict or dilemma in the film for Ravi is the fact that he was dating this American white woman for about 2 years. They were like best friends, and they obviously really cared about each other. We do see a little bit of interaction between the two of them over the phone and a little bit later in the film. But he is sort of questioning whether or not this traditional method of dating to meet other women is any help at all, or any different than what he had been doing dating. But then on the other hand, he had this really substantial relationship with someone, but we also find out, I think it was his first girlfriend or his only girlfriend. So he doesn't have a huge history of dating, but in a short amount of time, over the course of, I think, the year or so that they were filming, he went on, I think, 15 or more dates with different Indian women. And so from the parents' perspective, there's a little bit of an urgency and disappointment at the fact that their son has not yet found a partner and is still single. So the father, who is so lovable and he's so funny, seems to have a little bit more of an open mind about what his son is doing. And ultimately, I don't want to tell everything, but eventually Ravi does tell his father and his mother that he had dated this girl for 2 years, and he just didn't tell them. And the father's reaction and the mother's reaction is very evidently shock. They had no idea he was even dating anyone, especially a white girl. And for over 2 years, it's a long time. And the mother's really disappointed. It seems more about, and this comes out in the film, not being honest, but this is a very close family as well. So if you've got a really close-knit family, and they go on annual trips. They talk to each other frequently. Ravi and his sister live together, and traditionally, generations will live with one another. This was really an upsetting thing to his mother, who I think she felt betrayed that her son wouldn't even share this with her, that he was dating. I think that's what hurt the most. But one of the things that I see come up as an immigration attorney in terms of marriage and cultures and traditions is the sort of apprehension or conflict against having, or maybe not even against, but just, I think, the uncertainty or having somebody different or new being married to a family member when they are from a different background or culture. This can also be a potential issue in immigration cases for marriage-based petitions for green cards, where the two people that are married, one being a U.S. citizen or green card holder and the other being an immigrant, where their differences are so great that USCIS, the officer, the U.S. government officer interviewing the individuals for their green card, finds a lot of information somewhat suspicious if there are too many differences. So it's not necessarily that you cannot get a green card if you are different than your spouse, you have a different background, you're a different race, ethnicity, different cultural differences. That doesn't mean you can't get a green card. It just means that it'll be scrutinized a whole lot more than if two people are from the same ethnic background and they have the same cultural traditions or religion. And so I just, as an immigration attorney, was thinking about that and how I've seen interviews and talk to clients who were in that situation where one person was one race, they grew up overseas in a different country with a different culture, and there are just different traditions that their American spouse, it could have been a husband or wife, I've seen both, who is a U.S. citizen, and maybe they're white or they're African American, or they're just some other, race or ethnicity than their spouse, and they get more scrutiny on their applications to ensure that it's not a fraudulent marriage and it is a real marriage. So anyways, back to the documentary. Ravi is a U.S. citizen. He was born in America, and he was raised around a lot of other, friends and in a community where things were very different. He shows in the beginning just like the differences in movies, like Indian movies and American movies, and just there's different expectations of what is acceptable in his, traditional Indian culture and what he grew up with in America. So he's kind of thinking maybe he needs to date American Indians only, and that's his focus. But as the film goes on, one important thing that comes out and he sort of discovers is that he's kind of figuring out more about what he wants the more he dates. And this is probably true for just anybody in general. If you're dating, the more people you meet and the more you date and you put yourself out there and you're, just in that position where you're having to meet people one-on-one and go out on these different dates, you discover more of what you do want and what you don't want. And it's so funny to me how he gets put into these sort of unique situations. Like, I think the motel expo was one of them. There was some kind of expo he went to. And so he went on this sort of, I guess it was like a speed dating thing at one of those conventions or whatever the event was. And it's really funny. But in the end, and I won't say what happens, but it's really turns out to be more about self-discovery, I think. Even though there's this pursuit for love, there's all this pressure from family. He's really actually learning more about himself, what he wants, who he is. He is honest with his mother and father, which he hadn't been for so long. And I think it really brings them together, and it brings them closer together as a family. So I think it's an easygoing, fun, humorous, just lovely little documentary. And if you haven't seen it, you can find it. It's free on a few different uh, streaming channels, whatever they're called. I think it was Peacock and Amazon Prime, and there was a few others it came up on, but it's been out since 2015. So if you haven't seen it, go see it, meet the Patels, and let me know what you think about arranged marriages and how that compares with love marriage. Of course, in the United States, the divorce rate is fairly high, I think 40 to 50%, whereas in these arranged marriage situations, it's much lower, 1 to 4%. Family's much more involved. There's a lot of tradition as well. And I don't know if there's a difference in those kind of numbers in just America as compared to India, where a lot more families are doing that, and that's the expectation in that part of the world and in those countries. Okay, I think I kind of covered everything I wanted to talk about in this. And if you have any comments or you want to share your experience or your beliefs on arranged marriage dating and some of the differences between, I guess, modern thinking for younger Americanized generations of immigrant families compared to the traditional, I guess, values and expectations of some of the older generations, please share. I think it's really fascinating. It's interesting. And I'd love to hear anyone's, stories or comments that you have on this. So, all right, go meet the Patels.